Yourself. Go.
Well, welcome everyone to the Economic Development Board meeting for Thursday, January the 8th. Happy New Year to everybody.
Happy New
Glad to have everybody here. Yeah. I will remind everyone that the Economic Development Board meetings are available live through Zoom, and recordings may be posted online on the County of Huron's YouTube channel. You may be seen and or heard as part of these broadcasts, and your name, comments, and or presentation materials will become part of the public record. You thought I was going to forget, didn't you?
No, I didn't.
So first up then is approval of the agenda. I have a mover and a seconder. Somebody? John?
Yeah.
Trevor? Any more discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Declaration of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof. Seeing none, we'll move along. Minutes of the previous meeting. Everybody have a look at them. Any errors, omissions? If I can have a mover and a seconder then. Warden Jamie Heffer and Derek. Any, all those in favor? Anybody opposed? Then moving along, presentation and delegations. So we're going to start off with Mark and Stacy talking about the temporary international agricultural work programs and worker experiences in Huron County. Thank you both for being here.
Good morning, and thanks for having us.
There it is.
I'm presenting about the international agriculture workers employed in Canada's agri-food sector after a request came to County Council in November that was made for more information about this sector and the temporary international work programs. I have to warn you that this can be a little bit of a dense topic, and we can get into a lot of talk about legalities and processes. But before we get into all that, I want to make sure that we root this conversation in people. We're talking about people like Jake, who's pictured here. Jake is a member of our Immigrant Advisory Committee and moved to Canada in the last 5 years. Born in a rural area of the Philippines, Jake was immersed in the world of agriculture in childhood. Agriculture is the sector his parents were employed in. He completed a Bachelor of Science in Agriculture and worked in veterinary medicine sales and as a swine technician before moving to Canada and joining a Huron County farrow to finish farm. After 2 years on a temporary work permit, he applied to become a permanent resident of Canada and was successful. He has chosen to remain on the farm and stay in Huron County. When we talk about international agri-food workers, we see an asset in our community, people who bring valuable experience and are helping maintain our thriving agricultural sector. We also recognize that temporary agricultural workers may need a little bit of extra support to fully feel like they belong in our communities. When people feel like they belong, they contribute more to the community. As I talk about the various immigration pathways that are used to bring international workers to Canada, I want to highlight that I'm not a legal expert in these pathways. Immigration consultants and lawyers do significant training to understand the nuances of these pathways and who is eligible. Prior to this presentation, I consulted with Jennifer Rogeman, an immigration lawyer based in Waterloo, and Gemma Mendes-Smith, who some of you might know, an immigration consultant based in Formosa. The two programs that Huron County's employers are frequently using to bring international workers to Canada are the Temporary Foreign Work Program and the International Mobility Program. These two programs are quite different. The Temporary Foreign Work Program is for skilled international workers who have an offer of employment from a Canadian employer. The employer has to successfully complete a labor market impact assessment, known as an LMIA, with Employment and Social Development Canada. An LMIA is issued when it is determined that hiring an international worker will not negatively impact the Canadian labor market, and there is an authentic need for the employer to hire from abroad. The permit lengths vary. The International Mobility Program is for international workers in positions that offer economic, cultural, and other benefits for Canada and have reciprocal advantages for Canadian and permanent residents. And this is usually defined by some treaty Canada has with another nation. Applicants must have a registered job offer submitted to IRCC by a Canadian employer. The permit length varies from 6 months to 3 years. In both cases, many of these temporary work permit holders can apply for permanent residency if they meet eligibility requirements and remain in the country for a couple of years. Next slide. We know from Immigration, Refugee, and Citizenship Canada statistics that the number of temporary international workers in Huron County is increasing. In 2024, 760 people held temporary work permits under the two programs mentioned. The vast majority of these workers are employed in the agri-food sector. So last year, more recent data from the first 6 months of 2025 tell us that the top positions that were being applied for in Huron County were harvesting laborers, livestock laborers, and agricultural service contractors and farm supervisors. The areas where those permits were most frequently issued were South Huron, Huron East, and Blue Water. And here's the densest of the slides, so my apologies. If we are to apply for the temporary foreign work program as an employer, we have to complete this labor market impact assessment. And that means we have to prove we're not going to negatively affect the Canadian labor market. And so an LMIA is evaluated after reviewing how the employer advertised their jobs for Canadian workers and what other recruitment efforts they took. They also look at available labor market conditions and the numbers of people who in the unemployment rate for the region. They look at the wages being offered and the working conditions by the employer. They look at the labor shortage in the area and specifically around various sectors. And they also look at how skills and knowledge will be transferred to Canadians. International workers must be paid the medium wage as indicated by the job bank, the same as Canadians. And they must have the same work conditions. So this argument that people are bringing international workers to Canada because they want to pay less is not always valid. Some agricultural employers are exempt from the LMIA process. At least they were. They didn't have to go through it because the Canadian government recognized that this was the sector that traditionally has shortages, but that changed in December. So now all employers do have to go through that, regardless if you're an agriculture employer or not. And the agricultural sector can be issued up to 2 years for a temporary foreign work permit, or for the seasonal agricultural permit, it's 4 to 10 months. And so here's what we're hearing locally. The temporary foreign worker program, all employers have to complete this labor market impact assessment now. There is also concern that those permits, and this is what the lawyer and the immigration consultant told me, there's concern that they used to be able to receive a permit for 2 years. Now it's only 1 year. That's the concern. There's concern that the food processing sector, which is not primary agriculture, may be limited to a cap. So that means that only 10% of their workforce, is it 10 or 20? Just a sec. 20% of their workforce can be international agricultural or international temporary workers. So the other 80% must be Canadians. You also note that there's been a significant reduction in the number of new permits available, and that's by decree of the ministry in November 2025. So in 2025, there were 307,000 permits, temporary work permits available in Canada. In 2026, there will only be 230,000. Locally, what we see is that we are getting more inquiries from people on temporary work permits who wish to stay in Canada, but their permit expiration date is coming up. As we are not legal experts in immigration pathways, we refer those inquiries to immigration lawyers and consultants. As mentioned earlier, sometimes temporary workers need a little extra support. The ways we are doing this is by organizing ESL classes in Dashwood. Those classes were piloted thanks to funding from this board and have continued with local employer and community organization support. The next 10-week session is being planned for a February start date. We also organize annual webinars with immigration consultants and lawyers that are available to employers, community organizations, and service providers about changes to Canada's immigration pathways. One was held in December. And we are partnering with the municipality of South Huron to deliver the Sustainable Canadian Agricultural Partnership Grant through the strengthening of agri-food sector in South Huron through the International Agri-Food Worker Integration Project. So this project is conducting a survey, events, creating a video series, and organizing trainings and resources to improve international agri-food worker experiences. And this is where I'll turn it over to Stacey Jeffrey, who's leading this project, and can tell us more about the results of the survey.
Thanks, Mark. And I think that your, those background that you provided in terms of the programs really set this up. So in South Huron specifically, the number of temporary work permits increased from 20 in 2017 to 210 in 2023. So you can see why we're really embarking on a project of this nature. I won't go into too much detail about the project background. We do have a website that provides all of the details about the project. I'm more than happy to connect with anyone interested. Specifically, I'm going to talk about the survey that we had as part of this project. So it was open from August 18th to September 30th, 2025. We did translate the survey. It was offered in English, Spanish, Tagalog, and Ukrainian, as well as the survey promotions. We also translated that material as well. So the promotions were translated. We worked with local employers of international agri-food workers, as well as local businesses that interact with the international agri-food workers to really get the word out about the survey, as well as we had prizes for completion of the survey. And truly the goal was to understand what their experiences were in our community. So I will note that the number of responses truly is not reflective of the entirety of South Huron. We had 14 international agri-food workers fill out the survey. 71% have been living in Canada for 2 to 3 years, and 86% were between the ages of 25 and 44. Next slide, please, Mark, or thank you. So who filled out the survey? 86% can speak 2 or more languages well. 71% have temporary foreign worker status. 93% completed college, university, or an advanced degree. Next slide, please. So in terms of employment, income, and housing, 79% indicated that they work 40 hours or more a week. 85% indicated that they're in a job that matches their skills and experiences. And 50% reported their income is not enough to meet their needs. In terms of well-being, what we heard was 64% have no immediate family living with them in Canada. 85% felt at home within the first year of being in South Huron, and 61% reported experiencing at least some degree of isolation and loneliness. In terms of use of community services, so what we did is we asked, which services within the community have you used? this question was rather lengthy. There are many different services, that could be used in a community. What we found was that there was a strong reliance on those familiar services. So health services, place of worship, English language learning were frequently used in the last 12 months. What we found then was less reliant on those specialized services. When we think of specialized, we think of mental health services, language interpretation. Those were not used. So out of all of the respondents, no one indicated that they used those services within the community. So in terms of improved priorities, consistent with when we look at the rural newcomer settlement issues, and we did utilize the Huron Perth survey that was completed to kind of look at these. So other improved priorities that were identified: access to healthcare, affordable housing, transportation, and then information about permanent residency were identified. Next slide, thank you. So in terms of the experience, so first we asked, what services have you used? And then the second piece of that question was, what were your experiences? So the top ranked, very satisfied experiences. Number 1 was place of worship. Number 2 was English language learning. And number 3 were libraries. And then in terms of challenges, I don't think this will be any surprise that transportation was ranked as the number 1 top challenge. I think for anyone within a community, this is one of the top challenges that we see in any facet to the work that we do. The second one is finding information about permanent residency. So that when we dive a little bit deeper into that, it's, where those trusted resources are. Mark discussed some of the immigration lawyer and the legality of things. And some of the other challenges mentioned, which again, I think you can, draw a similarity between things that we hear elsewhere. So accessing healthcare, affordable housing, English language learning, community programming, employment, navigating local systems, social connections, accessing public and social services were other challenges that were mentioned. So the conclusions, like I mentioned, this was a small sample size, but we can gather some insights, particularly when we draw similarities between the findings of the Huron Perth survey that was completed as well. We know that international agri-food workers, they're building that strong economic and social foundations within our community. There is high employment, stable housing. So the respondents were satisfied with the housing provided here, which is wonderful. We know that our businesses are doing a really great job at that. There is that intention to settle long-term, although with that, the income adequacy remains key challenges for workers. When we look to, those community services and those supports, those community and faith connections are supporting the belonging, but there's limited cross-community when we look at community as a whole, as well as the impact to family separation. And although health and worship services were accessed regularly, we did note that there are some service gaps that exist related to mental health and health navigation, language interpretation, information about permanent residency, and transportation. And I will just conclude with what you don't see in this is some of the relationships that have been built with the local employers of international agri-food workers, as well as international food workers themselves. So the draw that we hosted, interacting with some of the workers, as well as part of the survey was if they would like to be involved further. So now that we have some contacts that can help us develop our next steps for resources and training and really deliver things that are needed and are necessary. So I will conclude with that. Happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Great. Well, thank you to Stacy and Mark for that presentation. Questions, comments? Anybody?
Sure.
Go ahead, Tina.
Yeah, I'm thank you both. As you know, and I know for Svet as well, I really feel passionately about this subject in general. It's super frustrating right now because no matter what efforts we put in at this level, the rules are changing all the time at the federal level, and for not for better in terms of ease in attracting workers to our county. The success of temporary foreign workers leads directly to the success of us having an economic engine to drive what we want to do in the county. I think it's really discouraging to see 14 respondents, because what we want to take away from this is enough information to drive at some level and at some point county policy, right? We can't do that with 14 respondents. So I think it would be an interesting discussion to have at some point how we increase the engagement level or get more people to fill out that survey. I don't think there were probably any surprises for you folks about what the results were. Would that be correct, Stacy and Kevin, Mark? Any surprises there? Sorry, not Kevin, but Mark and Stacy.
For me, there was a surprise around the use of the place of worship. So that it was so important. I think I undervalued that before this survey was done. And I agree with you, 14 isn't enough of a response rate to draw dramatic conclusions. But before this, the door was closed. We didn't know really what was going on. And now the door is slightly open. And so we're starting to peek inside and go, okay, what's going on in here? Whereas before we went, we don't really know.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I would add to that too, Mark. Yeah, so it was more informal conversations with employers that we at South Huron have had in the past about, supporting, let's say, programming or the ESL classes. But now that that door is open, we are learning a lot more from the employers themselves and those that work with the temporary foreign workers. So we are. Yes, although the 14 respondents, Mark and I worked, and Emma worked hard to get more on board. How can we be creative and reach a population that truly we haven't put effort into connecting with, right? So it's always difficult. And we had some really great assistance from the local employers, and we do have some lessons, right, in terms of how we can engage that population further. So the door is open and we're learning more and more each day.
That's great. Remind me, Mark, how many students came to that immigration or the graduation ceremony for ESL last year? Like there must have been 40 people there, right?
Yeah, there were 30 people who were on the temporary permit, and then other supporters were there as well.
Right. I wonder if they could fill the survey out in class.
It was shared to them.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So
But if they could here's 15 minutes of class time. I don't know. Just an idea.
You can offer that, but you can't force people to fill out a survey.
Why not?
They don't get a donut after.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Thanks.
I have a question if I'm.
Yeah, go ahead, Derek.
How are the employers going to navigate these policy changes? Have you reached out to them at all? Like, from what I understand, this is a huge part of their business, and it's a massive shift in the wrong direction. How's that going to go moving forward?
Yeah, one challenge that has always been a struggle for us is we don't know who has temporary workers. That information has been held very closely by the employer, so we didn't have access to that information. So we couldn't say, okay, it's this employer and this employer and this employer, and this is how you get in contact with them. And well, during the Christmas break, I found a wonderful list online of every single employer in Canada who's received an LMIA approval in 2025 for the first 6 months. And so I could start to break it down by postal code. And then it listed the name of the employer. That doesn't tell me how to get in contact with them, but at least I have a name. So that can start to develop. So that's been a challenge that we will start to take more action on. Key ways that we've used in the past is just doing these webinars that provide with immigration consultants and lawyers that provide information about the challenges. But again, because this is so dense, and if you do something wrong, you're responsible for somebody's livelihood. So we have to work with lawyers and consultants that are experts in this field, and that's why we refer to them. We don't want to take on that risk ourselves.
Yeah, Trevor.
Yeah, and I appreciate the question because I've had local, especially in the restaurant industry, Mark, as you know, business owners approach me, stressed out about the fact that they've had, temporary foreign workers come and work for them for 2 years, and then they're being sent back home, their former home, I'll call it. And the frustration there is they've taken the time to train these employees. The employees have taken the time. They're really good employees, some of their top employees that they have, and they've established themselves in the community, not just working at an establishment, but also volunteering in the community and being involved in the community. So it's hard on both ends. And those numbers in regards to going down are certainly not a positive. It would be a negative for anyone in the business that has temporary foreign workers.
I think something to add here is that the government had, in this most recent November announcement, said that basically every region that has an unemployment rate of higher than 6%, we're not going to approve your LMIAs anymore. But here in County and Perth, Grey, and Bruce, we have an unemployment rate that's well below 6%, because we're still qualified to have LMIAs looked at. But certainly there is a mood within Canadian politics to change the availability of temporary workers in Canada for employers.
Gordon McNeil.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And thank you very much for this enlightening presentation that it has very deep-reaching effects to Huron County. When we see the workers, especially in South Huron and the other Blue Water and Huron East, that rely on these workers for commerce to do business, that couldn't be done without them. This is a very significant program, and anything that we can do as a county with the government to both promote and advocate for this would certainly be beneficial to the commerce of Huron County and our residents and our businesses. So thanks for this.
Good. Sweat, did you have a question?
Not a question, but Mark was saying that there's a new policies and all this stuff. But in reality, when we work as a restaurant owners in Huron County, many of my employees who work here for 2 years, line cook, it takes at least 1 year to train them. One of them is already back home. He didn't figure out the way how he gonna renew his temporary work permit. I had few guys coming from a bunch of other restaurants that asking for LMIA that they were not able to renew. Couple of guys from McDonald's came here if I could renew their LMIAs or anything, but I had my employee, not five, but 3 employees work permit is expiring this October, and we don't know the way how we're gonna renew it. So on the website or in the announcement, it says we're gonna do that and this, but in real world, when we apply for it, it's not working for any of the restaurants. So that was the concern.
I agree. My focus was on the agricultural sector, so I didn't focus on the restaurant sector for this presentation.
Oh, okay.
Mark, I have a question. And at what point do we create so much paperwork for a farmer to bring in temporary foreign workers that he says, you know what, I'm just going to get out of the hog business and cash crop or do whatever? Are we, it seems like when will we put the last straw on the camel's back that they give up?
Mr. Chair, how do I answer that question? Yeah, I mean, this is what the immigration consultants are telling us, is that the requirements and paperwork required by farmers is more than ever before to
Right.
apply to get temporary workers from other countries.
So in a lot of cases, at least the few farmers I know, they've got to have someone on staff who's, an HR person that can try and handle this paperwork. Because there's no way the farmer himself can do that, right? You can't stay up on that and run the rest of your business. Whether they hire in a consultant on a 30% HR person that tries to stick handle all that for them. I don't know what the answer is, but that's the challenge, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's our advice is always to refer to immigration consultants and lawyers. They're the experts in this
Right.
field.
Yeah, I hear you. Tina?
And sometimes it's not just the difficulty of the paperwork. Because really, I mean, it's like income tax. We can do it if we make the time, bear down and do it. But what we used to have to do for LMIA was share our financial statements as well. So some people get to that step and they say, and Svet, maybe you can speak to this. Do you still have to share financials when you do an LMIA? Because we used to have to do that.
Yes, we still share financials and taxes and everything.
Yeah. So some people get to that stage and they're like, forget it.
Right.
I don't want to do this anymore
Right.
either. So yeah.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
that's what I'm sitting here and wondering too, Mr. Chair, is what happened? We just stop producing meat, or does it become so expensive that we can't? Or like what does that look like in a world where we don't have enough workers, especially for our county?
Mhm.
And I think we should be super concerned about it.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Any more questions, comments, John?
Two quick questions. One, in the presentation, you said that one of two major concerns was a lack of information regarding permanent residency status. Lack of information regarding that. Why would there
Correct.
be a lack of information?
So in terms of, there's a couple different aspects of that one. As we did host a International Agri-Food Supporter workshop, so we did dive into that a little bit deeper. In terms of trusted information, so there's a lot of information out there about how to obtain permanent residency, and what we're learning is that some of that information is incorrect, or the person is not legitimate and taking advantage of international workers. So that whole navigation of the system, and like Mark said, directing to that legitimate immigration lawyer, the expert, is the best. And right now we're finding that people are being taken advantage of and being steered in the wrong direction.
Oh, okay. So they don't get a body of information from the government that says, here's how to do it.
But the information's available online, but that doesn't mean that that's the way they're getting the information. So people often trust information that they receive by somebody who speaks their language. And so if your first language is Tagalog and you see a video on TikTok of someone speaking Tagalog about how to become a Canadian permanent resident, you're going to trust that information because someone's speaking in your first language.
Got it.
Rather than the government of Canada's information.
Second question is relating to numbers. The reduction in permits, is that how does that number, is that a struck number, or somebody just says we're reducing by 15%?
I don't know how those numbers were arrived at, but those are published by the Minister of Immigration.
How does he strike his numbers?
I don't know.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
It's a federal policy decision, though, right?
Based on what?
Based on whatever they talk about at the cabinet table, likely.
Got it.
So I think through you, Mr. Chair, if I
Yes.
may, one of the important things to remember is that there is a difference around your employment rate or unemployment rate. And so I don't want to say this is only a rural issue, but I think we can look back to the presentations that council received from restaurateurs like Svet, who said, if they advertise a job here, they might have one or two people that they could interview. And please correct me if I'm wrong, Svet. But if they were located in the GTA, they might have 35 or 40. So the use of temporary foreign workers is necessary where we have a shortfall of residents in rural Ontario, but policy often is created in more of an urban setting. And that's just sort of the reality that actually Minister Thompson talks about all the time. She's thrilled to have a Ministry of Rural Affairs because she can represent that it is different in a rural community than it is in an urban community. And I think that might be part of what we're struggling with, because we understand that shortage and that need and the value that temporary foreign workers bring to our employers. But that's not necessarily the reality in it's definitely not the reality in larger urban centers. So I don't know if that helps at all, John. I don't know how they make decisions either.
Got it.
But
Understood.
I think that's an influence.
And often seasonality is not captured when you look at employment rates either. So it
Yeah.
really breaks down when you get into a rural location like ours.
Mhm.
Also, we have a higher older population, so that may skew the employment rate data. Or we have a lot of youth migration from Huron County because they're not staying for post-secondary. That skews, like, are those people available for employment? Yes, but we can't hire them because they're going to university somewhere else, or they don't want to be in the workforce anymore because they're over 65 or for whatever reason. So that plus seasonality really skews us, pun intended.
And when you look at Mark and Stacy's slide deck, the number one position with temporary foreign workers was harvesting. That was 110 laborers. Harvesting, except for greenhouses, is primarily seasonal. And then falls to 34 positions with livestock. So like those numbers are really important to understand as well. And the reason that we only looked at agriculture in this particular research that was done was because the request from council came on the heels of a request from an employer in the agri-food space for facing a frustration with the LMIA process and looking to council to support. So we can support in principle that it is a frustration, but it begged the question with all the changes and all the complications and nuance, could we explain further to council how this works and what it means to Huron County? So we're bringing the presentation to the board on its way to go to council to answer those questions. But it was specifically a request from council around agriculture and explaining the nuance in agriculture. So like with any request for a staff report, it takes time, that costs money. And in this case, because of the legalities involved, it also cost consulting dollars. So we kept the scope to what council asked, not to the overall entire problem, which also involves our restaurants and hospitality businesses, which use foreign workers as well. So I just wanted to add a bit of clarity around that.
A clarifying question, then what percentage of like TFWs and temporary workers in Huron County would be ag-based? Like 60%, 85%? Do we know?
86%. I had that in the slides.
Oh, sorry, I missed that, Mark. Thank you.
It's okay.
I am paying attention.
Whereas in the GTA, it would be 0. Right.
Right. Yes.
And so when you speak to how does the federal ministry come up with their numbers? Well, they'd look at averages.
Yeah. Just thinking specifically of that's industry. So 15% would be outside ag, which is significant too.
Roz, did you have a question?
Comment. It's telling how energetic the conversation is around this important issue, and I think it's clear that it's also represented later in another agenda item as we talk about strategic plan. So I think that's telling that we're having such a strong conversation about this, and rightfully so. I really picked up on John's comment. Thank you, John. Like the surprise of well, is the information not just there? And Mark, you began with the comment, let's not forget this is all rooted in people. And that lens was so important because when John, you mentioned that, my first thought was the most important person in my life who navigated this, both on a permanent residency and citizenship, with every advantage that you can imagine, found it difficult. So strip away all those natural advantages of degrees and ability, and first language and everything. And it was a challenge because you only have content to read. You cannot speak to a government person. So all these resources that Mark and Stacy are talking about, I am so grateful for, because at the county level, we've invested in this, and it'll be at the county level beyond ECDev. I know there's movement with the libraries and cultural services, etc. So I do think this is an area where if we can think about, as Glenn said, what can we do? What resources, what sort of shared resources or investment in support that we can provide appropriately and where best, I think it's a worthy investment because it is affecting the lifeblood of our economic engine, which is agriculture and adjacent businesses. So I really appreciate this conversation. It's an importance.
My final comment is many of us are involved in other exercises, boards and such that require government numbers and so forth. And I'm finding overwhelmingly they're a struck number. Their numbers typically are a struck number. It's a mathematical exercise, not a strategic exercise. And that's why if it's a strategic exercise, they're hard to argue. But if it's a struck number, they're fairly easy to argue. So, and they're arriving at a number 20, we're going for 25% or we're going for 12%. So that's why I asked that question. Knowing how they strike their numbers gives you an opportunity to debate or modify their numbers because they're typically not strategic, they're struck. But just an observation.
Oh,
If I could ask a question, Mr. Chair, you commented, Vicky, that we've had communication with Minister Thompson as Rural Affairs. What about Ben Lobb at the federal level? Has there been a conversation for his involvement in this and the importance to the writing?
Through you, Mr. Chair, just to clarify, my comment was more of a general comment that Minister Thompson has made around the need for a Ministry of Rural Affairs, which can represent the diverse reality across rural Ontario, as opposed to an urban predisposition that often happens. So we have not had any direct conversations or on this topic with Minister Thompson. But if I may remind, the letter of support that was requested of council by the employer was to go forward and be CC'd to Minister Thompson's office and to Ben Lobb's office. Because immigration is primarily policy is set at the federal level and managed at the federal level, that is a very important conversation to be had. But the province is also involving itself in immigration now as well. And that really pivoted during COVID when we discovered some of the realities of those temporary foreign worker conditions.
Would it be advantageous to have a conversation with Ben Lobb and Minister Thompson on this?
I would suggest that if council feels strongly that they want to pursue this, or if the board feels strongly it wants to pursue this, those would be two very good places to start to have a conversation. I would also suggest that we would enter a conversation with a request. So supplying information, but also this is affecting our largest sector, but it is affecting also additional sectors. So as it affects the restaurants that we have heard from at council as well, that impacts our hospitality sector. So it's not just the restaurants, it's really all businesses that work in the
Yeah.
hospitality industry, which is also a big
That's an
sector.
important one. I just
So
said.
I would suggest that, as you well know, because you speak with the county council members at this table, speak with ministers and members of parliament frequently, it is best to go with, this is what I need from you. So I don't know if we're clear about that yet, but it could be an exercise of the board to get clarity and then put a plan of action. If you remember the strategic planning exercise that the board did last spring, one of your strategic objectives was workforce. So that would fall under that strategic objective.
If I may,
Go ahead.
Chair Vincent asked what the straw is going to be to break the camel's back. Just to put some economics to it, we've looked at bringing in foreign workers before, and the LMIA process is, if you're hiring a consultant to do it, somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000, plus you got flights. It used to be you get 2 years and then almost a guarantee renewal of 2 more years after that. So you got 4 years to cover that $15,000 sunk cost. Now you have a year to cover that $15,000 sunk cost. For a $50,000, let's say, labor position, it quadruples that sunk, relative to the amount of hours you're going to get. So it basically negates any value of it, right? So just a 30,000 foot, just anecdotal.
Oh, exactly.
We also wanted to highlight in the presentation that debunk the myth that foreign workers are taking away our jobs. So it's important to understand that what you have to go through before or in that LMIA process, so that you have proven that you have tried everything to get local workers before you move. Because why add an additional 15,000 to your hiring process if you don't have to, and when you're only guaranteed a year?
Yeah.
Right.
So it's going to shift the whole dynamic. 15,000 for a $100,000 farm manager is less percentage wise than for a milker. So then you're going to attribute more capital to labor savings and invest in innovation rather than hiring the people. So like it's gonna totally disrupt the apple cart.
Agreed. All right. Any more on that? Seeing none, then we have a motion crafted for us. If I could have a mover and a seconder for that motion.
Happy to do that.
Councilwoman McNeil and Tina. Any more discussion on the motion? If not, then all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. So again, thank you, Mark and Stacy, for your time and presentation. It was well done. So moving on to opening comments. So not to belabor the labor point, because we've talked about agriculture, temporary foreign workers. We've talked about restaurants, fast food, they're reducing hours due to staff. The other thing that is the positive is that the Minister of Long-Term Care has been assigning more long-term beds to Huron County. So for example, Southbridge built and it's now occupied, went out on 21 here. Those were extra beds, and they're now building in Exeter that also has extra beds. And also in Huron East, there's now potential for a large long-term facility. And again, a lot of it comes down to labor, right? Because Southbridge right now, I believe, is bringing a lot of contract workers in from London or Kitchener on buses and working 12-hour shifts and that sort of thing. And the challenge is, how do we try and get more people living in the community to do that work? I think I would say credit to the long-term beds that the county operates. They're typically local people. They know the residents, they know the families. Let's face it, I mean, it's just a lot better service. But these beds are going to be here, and we need to find people to help staff all that. And it's a great opportunity because we know there's a long waiting list to get into these long-term facilities, but we also have to have the people to do that. So, again, it's another challenge in labor force management, but I bring it up just to kind of reinforce that.
Can I comment on that, Mr.
Yeah,
Chair?
go ahead.
Yeah, the other effect to that is housing and transportation, right?
Absolutely.
So it's great if you want to recruit people to come move to your community, you have to have the housing for them to live in.
Yeah.
And that's probably our number one struggle right now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's a package, right? Anyway, on a lighter note, just wanted to say that the Abundance Cookbook launch went over very well at the barn in Brussels. If anybody can remember that far.
The warden modeling the book. Wow. Jamie, I'm impressed.
It was a project between the United Way and Economic Development.
Yes.
Money from each one of the cookbooks went to the United Way. And it's put at Taste Trail fundraiser as well. So I think it went over very well. Anybody that was there was well attended. The food, the snacks were very good, and I think it looked well for the Economic Development Board and the United Way to be working together on that project, and that I think was very well done. The other thing is I just want to thank everybody here and elsewhere that were involved with all the work in the strategic plan. I know a lot of people invested a lot of time to work on that, come out to different sessions, and I believe it was well done, and we'll reap the rewards here in a few minutes. But I just wanted to thank everybody for their involvement in that. Moving on then, 7 board member comments. Seeing none, then we'll move on to 8. 2025 supporting local youth program. Turn it over to Rick. Rick, thanks for being here.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So we started SLIP in 2024 as a pilot project from the board. So this was our second go around. The changes we made is we added a few sort of criteria around what was eligible, the kinds of activities that we were funding in 2025. We kept it at that it's targeted mostly to teenagers 14 to 19 years of age. Similar that it had a $1,000 maximum request. We did change it in 2024. We launched it in the spring. This year, we wanted to sort of align it more with the school year. So launch it in the fall and have it end around May, June. So we made those changes. The program opened for applications in October, and it was open for about a month. And then we met Lynn and Svet and myself in November to review this year's applications. So we received 5 applications this year, which was down from 2024. I think we got 9 in 2024 and approved 7. So this year we got 5, and all 5 were approved. Just going over them quickly. One is to do an Ontario's West Coast Music Fest. That's being led by CHSS Band and the Honor Band. There are 2, like I don't know what the program's called, but there's a band music program where they have competitions. And right now you either go to Toronto or Windsor. So we're going to be the 3rd location for bands in Ontario to travel to compete.
So Windsor, live.
Yes. Yeah. So, and I don't know if you've dealt with secondary schools, busing transportation is a budget issue for all of them now. So being able to, so they've already had interest from Perth, from London, from Bruce, of those bands coming to Blythe rather than having to like transport the students to Windsor or Toronto. So it'll be a 2-day conference. I think it's in March. It will be held at the Blythe Festival. And we are supporting that competition, that band competition locally. Eco Exeter, they do a community Christmas market on eco-friendly products. It was they did it, I think they started it in 2023 or 2024. I live in Exeter, so I know how popular it is in the community. It's a really great project to connect the high school with the community.
Nice.
But it was a minimal ask for them. That this year the school said that they were going to charge them maintenance fees for the use of the gymnasium. Everybody's got budget struggles. So we covered those costs for them of like the rental of the gym and cleaning after. GDCI concert band applied and were approved for $1,000. Again, part of it was, and I'll talk about this in a minute, but there seems to be lingering social effects from COVID in this cohort still that we sort of talked about when we were reviewing. So similar to the Music Fest and this one, there's the applications are identifying a need to create social activities to bring young people together in the same location at the same time to do things together, which still seems to be a hangover from COVID era, that needs to be forced and encouraged now instead of just happening naturally. So a lot of the concert band, we're buying them, supporting buying, getting matching t-shirts. I think we subsidized it. We're not buying them for them. But a lot of like creating social activities to create that social cohesion amongst the band members. Because the application was quite clear that they go and they practice and then they go home. And they don't see each other outside of band practice. I also think that's maybe a rural busing thing. CHSS, last year they applied the high skills major in manufacturing and they created a bunch of mini libraries for the community. I think they created 5 of them and they were really great and they're very popular. This year they're going to be creating like giant chess sets and stuff like that to hopefully keep people in civic areas. I think the first area is Balls Bridge, so that there's something more to do while people are visiting Balls Bridge to hang around longer. But I think possibly Millennium Park as well, so to keep people in the downtown core. The second one, the final one was Family Feud Night at CHSS in Exeter. And again, trying to connect the community with the high school by having a sort of games night at this school with families participating on teams. This one was supposed to happen in December, but got, with all those canceled days, has yet to be rescheduled, but will happen sometime this winter. I don't know when yet. So I think we had budgeted $10,000 for SLIP this year. We had total expenditures of $4,300, so we were underspent. One of the things that I'll circle back to that COVID hangover when we were reviewing the applications was that maybe our process is a barrier still. It's still very institutional. Of like, here's the deadline, here's the form. We did offer online sessions. There was no uptake on those at all. We also, if you had questions, contact us. But again, teenagers, right? It's a tough demographic. So in discussing it when we were reviewing the applications, that maybe if SLIP were to go forward in 2026, that looking at the process of how we solicit applications, I think it would probably be advantageous to have it be something like, if you have an idea, just contact us, rather than like, here's the form you have to fill out, and then we'll work with them more hands-on on like how to create that project description, right? Like how to, here's the form, let's do it together kind of thing. Because even the applications we're still seeing is like, they're struggling with it. It's foreign to them. So I think that institutional funding program thing might be a bit of a, I don't know what this is, and this looks too formal and structured, so I'm staying away from it.
They don't see them.
Yeah. With that demographic, and I think that's fair. So
Yeah.
I think if we do slip in 2026, I think that it would warrant a discussion about like how we can maybe lower the barrier a bit to make it more approachable for that age demographic.
If I may, you did try some new approaches with online promotion.
Oh yeah, we did. We had teenagers do videos that we tried everything that again us as a certain age.
Sounded like.
But I know I don't have personal experience with teenagers, especially now. But you know, when I hear from parents, like it's the same. Like they say they want this, then they don't want that. Trying to crack the code is difficult. That's why I think we still want to try and engage them and support them, because we're certainly hearing through the strat plan process and through councils that there's more work we could be doing to engage this demographic before they graduate and move on. It's just how to get them to see us more as an ally. Is there still some work to do?
Yeah, I find engaging the teenagers of the age bracket that you have here is you have to go to them, right? And have the conversation in front of them. Gone to our local high school here in town in regards to United Way YMCA Youth Leadership Program. They had 0 applicants, but we went into the cafeteria. They brought the grade 9s and 10s into the cafeteria, and then the 11s and 12s after. And the program that ended up being full after that, which is 16 applicants, right? So we had the forms there for them to fill out. We did a little presentation. We provided them the opportunity to ask questions. And there were some good questions like, well, what do I get out of it? Right, was one of the questions. And we said, well, it looks good on a resume if you're applying for a job or if you're applying for college or university, right? And that, you know, the light bulb went off in the young student's head and went, okay, I'll do this then, right? So they want to know what is in it for them, right, for the future. And you have the opportunity to say that. I don't know, you know, the hours involved in this, Rick. I realize it's very consuming to go to every single high school, but I find that's the best piece of engagement is if you go to them, because you can't expect them to come to you, right? It's just, it doesn't happen anymore that way.
I would 100% agree. And we do go to the high schools. We do through the business center. For a summer company, we go out and we pitch.
Do you pitch to the entire school or is it just certain classes?
I don't pitch.
Okay.
The person right.
Yeah, so I have my roadshow.
Okay, yeah.
I did about 14 presentations during the spring.
Okay.
And I put it out to all of the schools, anyone who's interested, be the two.
Yeah.
We've had uptick because we're going to speak about summer company, a lot of entrepreneurship classes, typically grade 10.
Mhm.
But I've spoken with anybody that will listen to me. So grade 11 English,
Yeah.
you know, the teacher's like, yeah, I'm like wheeling in the, you know, back in the day, the video cart.
Right. The exciting times,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and you're right, going to them, oftentimes I will find that kids will reach out to me after, maybe they're not comfortable in
Right.
front of their
Yeah,
peers,
yeah.
but then now I'm a human and they'll
Exactly.
email me. But
Okay.
yeah, and there might be opportunity, when I'm already doing that kind of roadshow work,
Mhm.
to promote this program.
Okay.
We can talk about that. But
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, good connection.
Ezra, did you have a comment? or question?
Well, I just want to clarify, is this the item where there's only $1,000 grant?
Yes, it's $1,000 maximum per.
So
Yeah.
is that enough to make it worth it?
You know what? They are often to that age demographic, believe it or not, $1,000 still seems like a fortune. And when they do reach out to me, they're like, we could do it for 400. And I'm like, well, you should print posters to tell people about it, or you should do some social media posts. And they're like, yeah, we could but they're afraid to actually ask for the full 1,000 in most cases because they think it's a lot of money. But I'm always like, what about marketing? How are you going to tell people? And they're like, well, we'll just tell our friends and it'll get around. So I think 1,000 is that the cap is not a barrier.
Okay.
Part of what we looked at when we looked at starting the program was that some of the barriers to youth to be able to gather, to reduce isolation, or to feel involved or have a voice in their community, which helps them to return, So that's that high school demographic. Make sure they feel like they can chart their course while they're here. It increases the opportunity for them to go back. And what Rick identified in the work that he did to lead up to the program was that one of the barriers is often that venue, the cost of the venue. So it can be quite low. And move them forward. So then the program was designed to look at some of the priorities of the department, but also to meet the needs of the youth, to engage the youth. And it didn't have, it has proven repeatedly, it doesn't have to be expensive. And we still move the needle quite effectively by engaging the youth in that way. So.
And it is paying those facility rentals like the eco market at the high school now. Even that is like it's $300, right? That was their only stumbling block. So
and they're only
easy, right?
But it, as Rick pointed out, for a few of the projects, it integrates youth with the larger community where they feel they have a voice, they're heard, they're respected, they're seen, and that is golden for then later efforts to attract them back to the community or to keep them within the community. So, I mean, as we've talked about the 3 phases of youth, it's common for them to want to go away for education or training or travel or whatever. But if they've had a good experience when they're here, they are more likely to return. And that's part of the really good experience. So it's playing the long game, but it's not a very expensive game. And as when we get into the strategic plan, you'll see it also helps with things like that social isolation and a lack of social activities thing too.
Yeah, even their connection to us, right? As a funder, connecting to local government, right? Building that network of who exists.
Yeah, it's a funding program on training wheels, basically. So let us help you figure out how to do this to make things happen down the road as a leader within your community when you're doing community building.
Good. All right, so we have a motion on the agenda 9.1. Can I have a mover and a seconder for that?
With that.
Tina? Lynn, you haven't got on the agenda. Lynn, any more discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Rick, for your time and doing that for us. So moving on to 9.2, the Starter Company Plus grant recipients. I'll turn it over to Tricia. Thank you.
Thank you. So the report that's been provided is the outcomes from the grant allocation that was decided by the Grant Review Committee for the program. The wrap-up celebrations also were rescheduled due to weather. So that will be happening in January, on January 15th. And there will be a report coming forward to a future meeting that will highlight more of the economic impact that this group and the seed money has had in the region. But for today's report, it's just to kind of illustrate who received money and what the projects entail. And I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Questions, comments? Yeah,
through you, Mr. Chair, this is a great program, and thank you for encouraging the youth because it shows them there are opportunities for funding for their work ethics where they have an area of interest. Great program. Well done.
Yeah, Tina.
It's great too that, you know, some are startups this year. We had a lot of expansions as well this year. So it's not just new companies. And the geographic distribution across the county was also noticeable. There was one great candidate. Well, I can't talk about that because it's recorded. Can't talk about that. No. Anyway.
Tina's the best. You are the best, honest to God.
Well, it was a really moving story. And anyway, you're going to see more from this candidate because she's just fantastic. I'm just going to say that. It's so exciting to be involved with these. And I made a social media post about it later, but being with these younger people for over 2 days really, as an entrepreneur, re-inspires me, and it lets me put my own stuff aside for a couple of days and remember why we do what we do and why we love economic development and just how good it feels to support these younger leaders in our community. It's such a gift to be able to do this. And I've done it 3 years in a row now, so I know it might be my time to end and have somebody else come on. But if you get a chance, it's just such a fantastic opportunity. You leave those 2 days just, you're walking on air. It's great. So,
Or it might be a great
Thank you,
time to recommit.
I'm good with that too, but just, I have to say, every year, the work that the staff does helps make the applications more clear and accessible for the judges, the way the information comes to us. I know even 3 years ago, it just took so much time to prep for some of them. And now it comes in a templated format. The applicants are more prepared for questions. They're more prepared to pitch. They're more prepared from a technological perspective. So the work that you did, Trish and Britt, and Heather, thank you. Heather is such a great addition. Really makes a difference and makes it such a good experience for us too. So I just thank you so much. Really, really well done. Thank you.
If there's one comment I could add, when we talk about economic development, we talk about a rural community. The biggest standout for me specifically, just as we've continued to shape this program, is the interconnectedness between the businesses and the owners. We've had multiple occasions where just this small cohort of 12 businesses then started partnering with each other on grand openings. Now we're seeing I've seen so much spin-off of that churn of the economic, development within this small cohort, that has lived on. And even I'm touching base now with 2024, and they've all remained connected. We're a small community. We need to be partners with other people in our community. So I just wanted to highlight that the program is not living in a vacuum. Like, they're not siloed. They're very much interconnected, and we're seeing that, every year, we're trying to find ways to continue to build that network of they have a shared experience through this program. So
certainly the mentoring you do through the program just builds enthusiasm in them and confidence. And it's just amazing how I'm sure you see them grow from start to finish. We just see the end, but yeah, it's exciting to see used with what they're doing and driving ahead, right? So good.
It's the first year I've seen the judges cry. Do you remember?
Oh, I remember.
It was one that we looked at and we all cried. It was just it was so moving. It's the adult day program for individuals with development disabilities. And it's just such important work. Sorry, Lynn.
There. No, don't worry about it. I just had a comment. I just wondered, it seems to be very heavy on the food. Is there a reason? I mean, that's great. I'm not, but
you're always kind of going, what? Because last year we had no food. And
that's what I was thinking. I don't remember.
Techniques, like promotion has been similar.
Yeah.
Outreach has been, it's really a mixed bag. We kind of are just like.
So you can't identify any reason for that, but just when I was reviewing.
I wouldn't say that the selection process, we're choosing those folks. We have a we interview. I mean, this year we had 47 applications, which was more like double the amount. So we couldn't interview everybody. So we had a scoring process and whatever. And we weren't specifically seeking out food businesses, just that those were the ones that rose to the top.
So within the 47, was it reflective percentage?
There was a lot. There was other food businesses we could have selected. And then there was
food related.
Yes, there was a lot of food. Like out of the whole 47, there was a lot of food.
Yeah. Okay. It was just an observation. I just
thought it was interesting. We noticed the same thing. We're like, oh yeah, there's just a lot of food. Bakery, but they all had different products. So it was a really nice compliment to the group, even though they were largely food.
I think the general overall economy affects that, right? Like barrier to entry with a business. I think that's a piece of it, maybe. That's the best thing I can but we're always trying to figure out why is there certain, but food was very heavily represented.
Yeah, okay. Sure. And I think if you look back, you'll see trends, right? So there was the year of the cookies. And then there was the year of the candle makers.
Okay.
Right. And so if you look back, there are certain current trends influence the businesses that arise as well. So I would like to think that we've raised the profile of food through the work in the local food work that's being done, but also through the foodpreneur work. We're just talking about it more, but we can't attribute that at all. It could just be the trend, or it could be they've done their market research and this is where they can make money. And that makes sense in Huron County. But also there's those trends. I clearly remember the year of the cookies and the year of the candles, right? It's like, do we need another candle maker? Well, they've done their research. There's space, right? And do love cookies, frankly, but
Good.
If I may, though, just like
go ahead.
part of the strategic plan, I think one of the outcomes or a goal would be to add value to our substrate that we produce within Huron County. And that is exactly what adding value to our agricultural produce is. So I think it all kind of ties together really well. I think it's 47 applicants, but then a food focus that I think is great. So.
And I think that we've long had conversations about Huron County and beans on boats, and that's a problem.
Yeah.
Right. So is that the attraction of one big food manufacturer? Is that enabling a lot of consumer packaged goods being developed and helping access markets and that sort of work, which is the work that really the HBC is focused on.
Yeah.
And so, pros and cons of all of that when you start to look at how do you fill the gap between beans on boats needing further processing, adding value to what we already create. But if you think of any of our problems like an iceberg, it's good to just chip away.
Yeah.
And it makes the economy more stable when it's spread out over a number of employers. We know the issues with one large employer if it should tend to leave the area. That's not that attracting a large employer is bad by any means, but the diversification is what's really important. And HBC is already, working really hard on that support of small businesses through the foodpreneur program. So developing consumer packaged products and what we're seeing as trends in the businesses we're working with.
Like over a decade, if you have 50 food companies, you don't know which one of them might scale and end up being like I think it's great.
Yeah.
Good. All right. Well, we have a motion in the agenda 9.2. Have a mover and a seconder for that. Ooh. Oh, Tina. Eric? Any more discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Big stretch break before we start on this. Does anybody want?
Do we want to take a break here before we start into the strategic plan?
Just
should
few minutes.
Sure. Should we?
I don't know.
We have to have with Justin Thompson staff.
Yeah.
The
That is
again.
going to ask. Either.
Right, if we could reconvene. We are at 9.3. The draft economic development strategic plan. We're going to turn that over to Chris. I'm sure everybody had a good look at it. And Chris sent it out. And take it away, Chris.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm very quickly just going to pass the baton here to Kevin, our consultant at McSweeney. But just before I do that, I want to echo your comments, Mr. Chair. Just a huge thank you to everybody who's been involved throughout this process, not only to yourselves as board members, but also to council, lower tier, or pardon me, partner municipality staff, our own internal staff, all the businesses throughout the county, and everybody else. I'll look right at the camera there who took the time to fill in a survey. Couldn't have got here without you. And with that, I'll pass it off to Kevin at McSweeney.
Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen. Got about a 50-50 hit rate on these. I'm hoping everybody can see the front slide here.
Yes, we can.
Yes, perfect. All right. Admittedly, Chris stole my thunder a little bit. I always like to start off with a thank you. So thank you, everybody. Just echoing Chris for all the work you've done here. I know for those of you on the board, we've been bugging you on a few different pieces. You've all been intimately involved in the consultation period. But I should also say thank you to the Huron County staff. Chris, Vicky, Brittany, Mark, and Rick, you guys were awesome to work with. We don't say that about every community. There are some where we sort of do a quick thanks and move on to the next part. But genuinely, this has been a really fun project, and you have all been wonderful partners on it. For the presentation today, we're not going to go page by page through the strategy. Hopefully everybody's done their homework, but also we realize you've been involved in the process, so we're not going to speak to the various steps we took or anything like that. But please, that doesn't mean if you have any questions about anything we've done, any of the specific actions, anything that's not in the document that you were hoping was, don't hesitate to ask those questions. We're just going to do a high-level presentation and then open it up to you folks. So looking to the presentation, there we are. The foundation that we saw for this was just encouraging Huron County to continue to do what economic development does well. One of the main themes that we heard coming out of the various consultations was don't reinvent the wheel. The staff is doing a really good job of connecting a lot of the pieces that they're working on are things that are building towards a really successful Huron County. And so don't change what staff is doing, keep doing that, and then just fine tune and continue to improve on the margins. We also want to respect the foundational pillars of Huron County economic development. It's sort of a unique department with the four pillars of economic development with different funding from different levels of government. And so respecting that each staff member has specific roles to play and how they're connected was really important as well. From a county level, building on current strengths. So not only is it continuing to do what economic development staff does really well, but also continue to do what the county does really well. You know, you're a strong rural agricultural based community. Don't suddenly pivot to something entirely different. Just build on the strengths that Huron County has so that you can grow, but grow in a way that respects the traditions and culture of the county. And then also we wanted to make sure, of course, that we're reflecting what we heard from stakeholders in the community. It's great to have big ideas. It's great to have little niche points and everything else, but we really want this to be a foundational document that supports what was heard throughout the consultative period from many different people around Huron County. In terms of the 10-year vision and goals, over the next decade, Huron County economic development will build on its strengths as a proudly rural community, again, not forgetting where it came from, protect its natural assets, a point of pride among many in the community, ensure that youth, residents, and newcomers alike all feel welcomed in the community, and then have a balanced approach to managing growth. And that managing growth was something that came up a lot in that, you know, Huron County is growing. There are wonderful opportunities that come along with that, but there's also hesitation in not losing what makes Huron County special. And so that was a really important aspect when we spoke to people in the community. In terms of the 6 priorities that we identified, which each had sub-goals and actions under them, there's leadership and collaboration. So being a county with partner municipalities and a number of different business support organizations throughout the county, it's really important that the Huron County economic development staff take leadership roles when appropriate, but also collaborate with all those different people within the community that are helping to make Huron County grow. Growing from within to diversify the economy. So that's focused on not just looking out for business growth, but how can we support those businesses that are already in Huron County? Can we be a great partner to help them grow? Can we help alleviate some pressure points, anything like that? Priority 3 looks to future workforce. So that's not just youth, but also the general future workforce of supporting immigration partnership and understanding what that future workforce will look like and their needs to be a welcoming community. Priority 4 is sustainable destination development. And that gets back to that managing growth. So tourism is a really unique opportunity, especially in rural Ontario with the way that the tourism sector is right now, but also the general sort of geopolitical economy and understanding that the changing dynamics of where Ontario residents want to visit. But at the same time, you don't want to be overrun by tourists without a way to manage that or not hit expectations while also using tourism to improve quality of life for local residents, focusing on what makes Huron County great for residents. Priority 5 is marketing and communications. This is always a tough one. Economic development staff does a lot of really great things, and it's always, well, if you can't get it out there and have people aware of it, then did you really do it? You know, the tree fall in the woods sort of approach. But the reality is, if you overmarket or over communicate what you're doing, then people get a little bit frustrated with you for just talking about what you're doing for your job. And so balancing that need to let people know what's going on in economic development, let people know about the opportunities that exist, but then also not over communicating to a point where you're just a tad annoying, I should say, to people around the community. So balancing that need. And then priority 6 is continuing to deliver core services. And that speaks back to that understanding that we want this strategy to focus on the things that Huron County staff are already doing that are really successful. And so there's a number of core deliverables within each of the 4 pillars of the economic development department. And this strategy shouldn't take away from those. This strategy builds on those core services, but it doesn't replace them in any way. And so making sure that the staff are aware of their core deliverables first and foremost is really important. And it's not just staff being aware of those, but also the staff being able to point to those when they're speaking to county council or to partner municipalities or to residents in the community to say, we can't forget about these things. It's really important that we focus on these. And that's a key part of the strategy as well. And that gets into the last slide I'm going to be talking about before opening it up to questions, which are scope and capacity limitations. One of the things that always comes up with strategies, and certainly came up in this strategic development or strategic plan development, is scope and capacity limitations. Economic development can often be everything to everyone. And it was really important that as we focused on what economic development can do, we didn't want to ignore the things that people often talked about that are front of mind for people, that economic development can support and assist on, but aren't going to be leading on because it doesn't fall within the scope of what staff can do. One of those things was youth social issues and post-secondary opportunities. There is a component to the strategy that spoke directly to youth and that future workforce priority. But at the same time, there are youth issues, whether it's social issues like drug abuse or drug challenges or post-secondary opportunities that the staff really can't focus on or at least lead on. They can be a support role on, they can help, and it of course impacts economic development, but that's not something they would be leading on. Similarly, community transportation is something we heard a great deal about, the desire to have more non-private vehicle transportation opportunities. It's something economic development staff can assist on, but it's not something that would fall within the scope of the department. Third is housing. This is a challenge across the country. We know that there are limitations. We know it affects labor recruitment and has a direct impact on the ability to bring people into Huron County. Similarly, daycare with young families and a lack of daycare spaces, it can be really hard to attract workers and improve the quality of life and everything else. These are issues, again, economic development can speak to how they impact workforce retention or economic growth or anything like that, but it's not something the staff would lead on. It was really important to staff as we built this strategy, though, that we made clear we heard about it. We heard those issues. We heard from people during the consultation period that these are top of mind, and they're things that staff will try as hard as they can to support in whatever way makes sense, whether it's cross-department reporting or just information or getting it out there to businesses and whatever else. But it's not something that they would lead on. So it's not things that will come up in the actions because they just don't have the ability, given department capabilities and given their role, to directly address these. As I mentioned, we really just wanted to give a high-level explanation of what's in the document. We would love to turn it over to questions. If you have any notes about why something didn't end up in the strategy or why it did or whatever else, the process, happy to walk through anything and everything. And again, thank you so much for having us. This has been a real pleasure.
Good. Well, thank you very much. And we'll open it up to questions, comments.
I say, do you want me to stop sharing? I don't know how it looks on your end, whether it's easier that way.
Yeah, stop sharing.
So we can see others. Yeah.
Well, Kevin, I maybe have it's more of a comment that I thought the whole thing looked great and I went through it and then I was talking to Chris, realized there wasn't really an emphasis on clean energy, although it kind of can permeate in on the backside. But certainly when we're sitting beside the Bruce here and with talk about Bruce C, you know, the challenge for us, I believe, is to, you know, get our fair slice of that pie. So it's just more of a comment. I sat through it and never even thought to mention clean energy. So that's on me till afterwards, but I'll put that out there.
Yeah, it's something that we heard from, I think I'd say a couple people during the consultations. We typically avoid getting into specific sector opportunities unless it's sort of an overwhelming wave or barrage of comments from folks. But to your point about, there's opportunities there. One of the great things about a document like this is that it speaks at that, not
A
next
little
level,
choppy there,
but
Ken.
You're freezing up on us.
I'm going to try again. Is that any better?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Sorry, I don't know how much you heard. We heard clean energy from one or two folks. This will speak more to, rather than getting into specifics on a sector engagement, it will lay the groundwork for you to be attractive to businesses that may be in that sector. And so down the road, for the economic development staff, it may be necessary to get a little bit more specific on sector attraction or something like that. But in this document, if the actions are followed through on, then it's something where a business, whether it's in energy or something else, you will be ready for that approach. And so it's just becoming more business ready, or consistently becoming more business ready, so that if those opportunities arise, whether it's in clean energy or something else 5 years down the road, you can be ready for it.
Okay, good. I don't know if we should have a parade. The sun just came out.
Yeah.
We're inside. So Trevor.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Brian, and I agree with Kevin. I think we have to be ready, especially with Bruce C, and that's in regards to housing as well. We talk about housing and transportation, but the other thing is, some of the suppliers that are with Bruce Power right now, some of them are looking at expansion that are currently maybe in cities, and they're looking for areas that have rail, that have a port, that have an airport. So these are all things that Huron County does have. I want to bring up the whole Port of Goderich thing because, with the federal budget, it does sound very beneficial that we will get some type of an expansion with our port. But when we talk about agriculture, we talk about nuclear, there's a vision there to expand on some of that stuff as well. So, I don't want that to be forgotten about, right? It's a huge thing in Huron County to have a port. Right now we deal with the salt, the aggregate, calcium chloride and grain and other things with Parrish and Heimbecker, right? But there's a huge opportunity here with this expansion if it does go through. So I just want to keep that on our radar. And especially with the Bruce C project, with possible expansion, 10 years down the road or whatever. We've got to have that vision. Just because it's in Bruce County doesn't mean that it doesn't have anything to do with Huron County, because it certainly will.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Questions, comments? Chris, did you have your finger up?
Yeah, I was just gonna comment really quickly. I just wanted to stress that just because a specific either sector or task is not identified as an opportunity, I kind of come back to our council priorities, right? Like if you look at the council priorities, you'll see, for example, that EMS isn't there, right? But that doesn't mean that EMS, like that the county's going to stop doing EMS tomorrow, right? EMS is absolutely there and absolutely going to be a continued part of the services that the county provides, right? And I think looking at the plan, it's sort of similar, right? Like you may not see a specific call out, but to Kevin's point, really what we're trying to do is lay the groundwork to make sure that we're ready for those opportunities, like when the port expands, when Bruce C happens, right? You'll see a lot of work in there about working very closely with our partner municipalities to get services and shovel-ready land ready. But more than that, making sure that our processes are very smooth for anybody that has any interest in expanding or moving to the area, to make that process as seamless as possible for anyone who wants to do that. So all of these sort of foundational, very not as shiny things per se, but really make the difference to sort of, have a significant impact down the road.
Good. Password and McNeil.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And to Chris and to Kevin and all the staff that are involved in this, this is great work. Any business needs a plan. as to how to move forward. And this is a strategic direction, and then follow it for future development within Huron County, for future generations. Well done. Thank you for your assistance, Kevin.
Mr. Mitchell.
Yeah, I'm going to be on my soapbox for about 2 minutes.
Okay.
And the problem is, and it's foundational, and it's so buried it didn't even make the scope and capacity limitations. And that is the way to grow any business organization is knowing what to do and doing it. And that requires skilled, due diligence-based, timely decision-making. And the structure we have is not conducive to timely due diligence decision-making. The structure with the 9 municipalities, I'm sorry, it just is. And I know for the recording and for the group here, it's foundational. It's a foundational problem. It's very difficult to restructure, to grow an organization in a structure as complicated as the structure is. Kevin, you and I talked about it at Homesville, and I said, is there any part of this that deals with the structure? And you accurately said, no, that's out of scope. And I'm sure it is out of scope. But until it is in scope, until a structure is devised that's simplified, cost avoided, and is conducive to making the hundreds of decisions that this plan requires, it's going to be very, very difficult to grow an organization like Huron County economically. End of dissertation.
Thanks, John.
So to follow up on that, what do you suggest?
Simplification. It's a you want it?
Yep, sure. If I didn't want it, I wouldn't have happened.
There's a costly, you know what the structure is. 9 municipalities. Basically 705 people in the county, 715, I think, in municipalities. There is a municipal person for every 43 of us, I think, or a county government, local government person. Those costs are extreme, but what it does is it stymies decision making. If you have to go through 9 levels, 9 individual parties, 9 different government organizations to collectively run an economic development plan, you have to get approval from 9 different bodies, and they have an individual geographical area to concern themselves with when it gets to the big house, to the top board. It's difficult to agree on one plan for the geography as a whole. And I just think it's to simplify, is to simplify the structure, or modify the decision-making structure, if not to modify the geographical municipal structure, to simplify the decision-making structure, to make it more of a simplified management group versus levels and boards. And when you look at it, it's difficult to make decisions when you've got, for example, the city of Toronto that has 39 councillors. We have 81 councillors in all the municipalities and so forth. How do you make decisions based on that? How do you have a plan, and that's good. It's a great plan. But how do you activate it? There's hundreds of decisions in here, hundreds of budgets in here. How, if you can act on them, if Chris and Vicky can act on them autonomously, happy day. But that's not necessarily how it works. That's all I'm saying, is until you're handed a structure that makes decisions in a timely and effective way, it's very difficult to do this. And it's up for debate. Maybe I'm nuts. I'm very probably nuts. I don't think I am, but it's it's tough to do in this structure. I've been at it 10 years now. I promise I'm not nuts, but there's got to be a way. If it can't be structured geographically and simplified geographically, then simplify it from a decision-making process. Have a management group, CAO, CFO, CEO, whether those like a group that says, here's what we're going to do. Rather than go through 9 municipalities for their approval, and most of them don't. In my time in economic development, the number of programs that I can honestly say that we ran through all municipalities with success, my experience, and argue if you want, is exactly 0. That all municipalities bought into. They all said, yeah, I'm there. Yeah, that kind of thing. That's my experience, limited as it is. But that's all I'm saying is yes.
So for example, John, I just want to make sure I'm really understanding this. For example, if we talk about housing, instead of making a decision at the county level that could impact the county, we have to get approval from 9 different planning departments, which doesn't happen. And so that's the issue, right? That would be an example of that happening. Okay.
Yeah.
Just wanted to make sure I'm on the same page.
It's a perfect example. I'm involved in a housing group that's here on Perth, and it's basically 9 municipalities. You're dealing with 9 different entities, 9 different municipalities, 9 different processes, 9 different levels of interest, obviously 9 different levels of need, but and then the county as a whole, the big house, you have to deal at that level as well. It's very, very difficult. And like I said, it's great to have a plan, and kudos, you guys, good plan, looks great. But there's hundreds of decisions in there. Hundreds, dozens of budgets.
So my question then would be, I think our next step then, or the department's next step would be to come up with a delivery plan, right? Who owns what, when we're going to get it done, what the KPIs are.
Yeah.
And it might be interesting to reflect that this is a concern.
I think a great legacy for, the municipal management, elected officials, so on, would be to deliver that.
Right.
How do we decide things? And I come from the world of business, and I'm sorry about that, capitalist bastard and all that kind of stuff. But the fact is, I'm not saying make it a corporation and sit in the boardroom and so on. But if you bust that down and make the areas responsible for their own deliverables, and say, Vicky, here's the thing. We're going to give you a whole bunch of money. Here's the 9 things. There's 47 things. You're going to do 9 and drive on. Hire your people, go get it. Now you're talking. Then come to the big group and say, here's what we accomplished. Here's what we're going to do. Not, here's what we think we're going to do and let's all talk about it again. Right? You see what I'm saying?
I do. Let's get some.
Okay.
Let's get some.
So what about that? What about going and saying, hey, planning, hey, ECDev, hey, I don't know what other divisions you got, but it's muddy, it's cumbersome. And I've lived it, begging at the door to get municipalities to agree to a program that makes imminent sense.
Yeah.
And it's free. I mean, it's enough to make you want to shoot yourself.
Join the board.
Well, that's exactly. So I'll leave you with that, and thank you for your time.
Well, thanks for the comments. I appreciate it and understand that I'm not 100% sure as a board what we can do, but that is the.
Well, it's like, as Kevin said to me at Holmesville, it's out of scope.
Okay.
And that's one of the difficulties. It's out of scope.
Yeah.
It needs to be in scope, but it's out of scope. Right now, it's out of scope.
Right.
And it's you can cost avoid this thing by about $9 million a year in about a heartbeat, and improve decision making, and improve efficiency, just by simplification. And it doesn't need to be, a structure of let's get rid of all the municipalities. What about economically? We discussed a long time ago, and instead of municipalities, economic development zones, east, central, west, north, central, south. That reduce cost dramatically and simplify decision making based on geographical economic development need. Because typically those three areas, east, central, west, central, east, have tourism, agricultural, and industrial band. Just those types of ideas. Not take it from 9 to 0, maybe take it from 9 to 3. That, simplify cost and make decisions based on your economic development value. North, central, south. I don't know how to carve it up, but it's an old structure. Every business, yours, mine, every business, it changes. It changes with the times. It grows, it simplifies, it cost avoids. As electronics, as you don't need your handshake relationship with your municipality anymore, hey, if I don't need that handshake relationship, don't have it. But this plan does have, it's an economic development strategy, but it's not aligned in any way geographically. So now you got to get 9 people to buy in. And they say, well, I don't see myself in that. So maybe I won't. Right? It could be simpler and it could be more efficient. That's all I'm saying. There's a lot of smart people in the room. Think about it. Put it on your agenda. Say, how can we simplify this thing? How can we make it more efficient? How can we make it less cumbersome? How can we not have to get 81 people to agree? Or the majority of 81 people to agree. That type of thing. That is, and it's you think it's off topic, but it's not. It's very much on topic. To grow the organization, you need to decide things. You decide in a timely way, on a due diligence-based way. There's due diligence here. Now let's decide how to decide. Or you won't get the value out of this. Or frankly, many of the other decision-making processes that are required in an organization this size, with a budget of this size. Think about it, throw it up on the agenda. See what people think. Think about economic development zones. I promise you it will work. I promise you it will work. West, central, east. 3. And align themselves that way. And they'll align themselves in any number of ways, not just economically. There may not be a better way, but it might be worth discussing if there is or is not a better way, a more simplified way, a more cost-avoided way, a more efficient way, a way to better make decisions. Sorry, I have to.
No, it's okay. I have questions and I have more comments, I think, for the board itself. I guess I'll just start with the questions. So I understand as part of scope. Oh, hey, Kevin. I understand as part of scope to kind of look at other municipalities that were in a similar, kind of state and what things might have worked and not worked in the evaluation process of putting together kind of priorities. But I didn't notice any comment of that in the report.
Yeah, that's a great comment. So we have sent staff a comparative community review where what we did was look at some municipalities that we have interacted with, some that we heard of that we reached out to just give a little bit of filler background information on some of the things that are in here. So we actually spoke with staff just earlier this week on that, including something, a little bit about BR&E and what works, what doesn't work, things like that. That will remain with staff privately for a couple reasons. One, because we're talking about other municipalities and it's not something where we want to put publicly, hey, here's a reflection on what another municipality did. We also had those folks speak to us with the pseudo understanding that we're not going to be putting them out putting what they say out to the public in any way. It's a positive report, but still, we just want to be leery of pushing that out. So that will be with staff to help impact some of these. And I don't know if there's a way to share that privately. I don't know the rules on the board. I'll leave that with Chris and Vicky. But that's something that remains private just for general concerns of.
Yeah, no, I can appreciate that. And I guess we can know maybe some of the data without naming the municipalities, but just understanding what works and doesn't work, I think can go a long way in, evaluating priorities. And the priorities that you have there, are those ranked in priority? Like, are they in that particular order for a reason?
The numbers, okay, so we have struggled nonstop with whether to number priorities, have them unlisted. No, there's no specific order to the numbers.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to present that in a way that sort of gets around that, but no, the idea is that they are more or less all on equal footing.
Okay, happy to hear that. The last question is the stats that you have in the thing on these stats here. I'm curious, where'd you get these from?
So the snapshot there?
Demographic stuff.
Yeah, so the community situational analysis relies on two different data points. All of the data in here, I just want to make sure, is all from Manifold Super Demographics. So really quickly, our spiel, there's two different data sources that we use as predominant data sources. Manifold is one and Lightcast is another. So Manifold data is essentially the census on steroids. It is done on an annual basis. It uses the census as its backbone, but then supplements it with a whole bunch of private data sources to get more accurate annual data rather than every 5 years. So the census, it's a great tool. It profiles or surveys as many people in the community as it can, and then it extrapolates out from that survey response to get whatever number it gets at. The Manifold data uses that, but then also has those private data sources that get more accurate data on a yearly basis. So it can just be a little bit more accurate than the census figures. The other tool is Lightcast. So if you look at the bigger community situational analysis, you'll also see, where Manifold data looks at the people who live in a community, Lightcast looks at the businesses that make it up. So business counts, job totals within those businesses, things like that, regardless of where those employees work. And so those two form the cornerstone of that bigger analysis.
Yeah, because I noticed that the median age is quite different from like what StatsCan reports in the area. But I know StatsCan is outdated, but there's quite a big difference there in some of those numbers.
Yeah, one of the challenges that StatsCan has is it comes down to who responds to the data, and to the discussions that were had earlier about the lower numbers and the difficulty of reaching teens and reaching different populations. It can be really hard to reach non-middle age or older white folks or Caucasian folks because they are less likely to respond to surveys. I don't think any teen has probably ever responded to the census, if we're being honest, just based on teenagers. And so it can undercount those. They have tools that try to address that, but nevertheless, you'll frequently see when the census comes out, data related challenges with that. And so that's probably where that's coming from in part.
Those are the end of my questions. I don't know, can I maybe make some comments on it generally, like just to the team, or do we want to change those for a different time? Or I'm not sure, but in general, like if it was just questions to Kevin, or if there's more of an open dialogue around like just the actual overall report. And
I think an open dialogue is
at
this point.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is a very polite board.
Yeah, no, that's right. So a couple of comments. I mean, the comment, I guess, initially in the executive summary about just housing, transportation, like childcare, retention, all those as out of scope. I don't think those can be out of scope from an economic development standpoint, because they're a primary constraint to all the other aspects of what economic development is doing. I understand the scope aspect of it, but maybe there's ways that the board can still help without without incurring such a large economic burden to it. So but I just want to emphasize, I think that we have to do something about housing, transportation, childcare, youth retention, all those things that are really key to attracting business and expansion in the area. Just throwing a couple of quick ideas out there, maybe there's advocacy we can do, right? Maybe there's help assembling some funding, or just, there's other aspects that it can be in scope without actually economic input, so to speak.
If I may,
for a second?
I just wanted to jump in for a second. So you're not the only one who had that feedback.
Oh, okay, perfect.
So when we circulated the document to the board, we also circulated it to those who participated in the working group and to our municipal partners. We sat and met with our municipal partners as well.
Yeah, perfect.
And so I spent time, surprise Kevin, I spent time last night redrafting that section to give it more clarity, because I think what we mean when we say it's out of scope is we are not mounting a specific project led by the department on housing right now, on transport right now. So in my redraft, I gave a bit more context and history. So for example, housing, we work with a 3-department group across the county. This board itself has sponsored work to talk about density done well. The planning department has changed bylaws to make a density as of right, to include additional residential units, and then social and property services. And the county itself has invested heavily to build new units. So I've broken this out a little bit more in a draft to show what we're doing. So it's not that we're not doing it. It is not a number one priority with finances dedicated. When we think of transportation, it's massive. We have spoken with council on this topic. And so what we are doing, starting with under council's direction, is Chris sits on an advocacy working group with the Western Ontario Wardens Caucus. Chris has also been given permission. We're thrilled with our partners. There is a large transportation study going on with 4 municipalities: Bruce, Grey, Dufferin, Wellington. It's a working group that was convened with funding and led by Grey County. We have asked if Chris can sit in because the position of those counties would mean that if they developed a feasible rural transportation system, we're right next door to emulate and participate in what they're developing. We're not leading a transportation study. So when we read through this section, we felt it was really important. So when you say youth and youth challenges, mental health, we are not mental health counselors, but we have helped fund organizations move toward the Hub through the SLED program, or Tanner Steffler Foundation through the SLED program. We've helped to fund their work to help with youth mental health and drug addiction program. We have the SLIP program that you heard about this morning. So we've actually, I've took a stab at redrafting, and staff will go through it, and Kevin will go through it. So before this, we've taken a stab at part of our core continued to delivery. We've highlighted what we've been doing on all 4 issues. Daycare is managed by Social and Property Services, but we work closely with them to say that anybody who wants a home daycare license that they issue, Brittany's group has the ability to coach them into how to run a business. So not the care, that's not our job, that's out of scope, but the how to run a business, we're right there. We can talk to the graduating class. We give business cards to that group to say we can coach you. So we felt there could be clearer definitions. So we do agree with you. And that is how we're going to try to redraft after this meeting before it goes in front of council, to give a better understanding of if we were to go, for example, do transportation, we would need a full-time dedicated staff. We would need hundreds of thousands of dollars of funding, and we could create a transportation system on our own that would go to the edge of our boundary.
Yeah.
So limited, service, yes, maybe for workforce to travel within the county, but a limited project that would suck a lot of resources for not a lot of outcomes. So we've taken another direction to participate in that way.
Yeah, I know, I completely get it, the scope aspect of it.
Yeah.
So as long as there's like some advocacy and, those aspects of it that help.
Well, and your comments are appreciated because they echo what we've heard from others. They've echoed what we've heard around the table today, that these are issues. What we're trying to clarify is we can be part of a solution in some aspect, but it is not going to be, okay, ECDEB, you're now creating a transportation system.
Yeah.
But we're monitoring what else is going on and what other solutions are there. So again, appreciate the comments because we've already started to redraft, and you've just confirmed that maybe we should continue to work on clarifying a little bit more about what that means.
And maybe another item, you might already be working on it, but the biggest challenge I had is evaluating the return on effort for a lot of these activities. And, is there an opportunity to add metrics to these so that we can evaluate, if the effort is worth the reward and the outcome to it? And I think this aligns a lot with just data collection as well, but just the idea of how will we know if these are working or not? And just not being afraid if we're 2 years into something, if things aren't providing the right return, that we can just we can say it's not working, let's stop, instead of keep on going on an activity that's just not producing any results.
And what will happen next is when council approves this, then we look at operationalizing it. So not all of these activities will happen in the first year. These are a high level. So it will be, we will make selections as what gets implemented first, where we would apply highest and best use in that operationalizing of activities. Metrics will be attached because we need to be able to measure to make sure that we're having impact. So we're just not at that stage.
Yeah, and being able to accurately measure economic output for each.
If I can jump in on that,
please.
One data nerd to another. So that's always a discussion we have. So we will be working with staff to build what we call an implementation plan once it's approved, which talks through who's responsible for what, timelines, things like that. The KPIs, for lack of a better term, are where it's a real challenge consistently, because often what ends up happening is somebody will want to see, well, how many businesses did you bring in, to make a really easy example. And the reality is that's just not how these sorts of things can be measured, because you can lay the foundation for everything to be successful, but if a business doesn't want to come to your community for some esoteric reason, you don't have control over that final result. So it's a real process over results standpoint. Where the value in the implementation plan comes in is providing a tangible way to report to council on what actions you've done. And so you can really lay out, here's what we have done to specifically address each of these actions in the document. And then it comes down to strong reporting from staff to say, here's what we saw based on this. So if we did a BRNE exercise, we were able to reach out to X number of businesses and give specific examples of how the work you've done or how the work staff has done has led to not necessarily results, but better processes in place. And so having clear, whether it's annual reporting or something else, reports to council that make it clear what you're doing and how that's helping is as big as trying to get into specific KPIs, because that can be a real challenge. Because what is economic growth at the end of the day? That can be a real challenge. And then separately on that, and one of the things that we talked with Chris and Vicky about on Tuesday about the BRNE exercise is, we've worked with clients who will do BRNE exercises and then not a lot happens, or business retention and expansion exercises. So they will go out and speak with businesses on a consistent basis. And the joke I was making to Chris and Vicky was, you go out for lunch with a business and there's no actionable item that comes out of that. And folks will go, all you got to do is go have a lunch. That's not work. But it is. And what we've seen is that in a community that will sit and you'll have a relationship with that business that's built and nothing will come of it for 6, 7 years. And year 8 comes along and suddenly they need something and they know who to reach out to and they have that connection. Or you know another business who needs something and you happen to realize that the business you spoke to, who you have a relationship built with, has the opportunity to help that. And so there are some things that will be clearly successful within a year or two. And there will be other things where it's the process that leads to, over time, a much more cleaner outcome where you may not see a dividend on that for 7 or 8 years, but eventually it's helpful. And those things can be really hard to measure. And it's important, it will come to be important to staff to really show that in presenting to the board or to council or whomever else when they do those presentations on the strategic plan, to say, we are doing these things because X, Y, and Z. This is a success because of this, and explaining that thought process out. But it can be a really hard line to toe because it is difficult to show in like a hard metric, which when you think about economics, you expect to see numbers more often.
Well, that's my worry, right? Like a lot of this might end up being more work, but not have a big enough economic output to it. And like there's a lot of items in here that are very like, process policy kind of driven.
Yeah.
But I'm worried that it might not actually have a lot of economic output to it. And because resources are limited, like I would maybe make the argument, if you can't track it or get a valuable metric out of it, you don't do it. Right. And just like if you're not able to completely track like what the return is on your work effort, then maybe it's not worth doing.
Another capitalist bastard.
Yeah. I mean, I just, it's just the thing is, it's like you have so many resources and there needs to be some results in economic development. And if there's not, then like, how do you, I don't know. I have a hard time evaluating priorities if you don't know what you're measuring. And, I get that the measurements might not be one for one, or it might be difficult to get, but there has to be some measurement to the work, or, I mean, I think that's a real key aspect of this overall.
Through you, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
it is a constant conversation and it may be worthy of a presentation and conversation with the board, especially once the implementation plan is drafted. And so we often talk about in reporting, we talk about outputs, outcomes, and impacts. And so outputs are easy. We ran this morning, starter company, and we had 12 businesses graduate. And, the outcome is that 12 businesses either started or expanded. So Trish alluded to the work that she's talking to last year's graduates and the graduates the year before. And now we're starting to look at outcomes and impact. So how much did they go on to invest? How much did they influence the economy? How much do they spend within the Huron economy? And trying to get those metrics. There are challenges, as Kevin alluded to, with measurement, and especially as you get further away from an individual action, the attribution becomes difficult. As I alluded to this morning with food, we've been talking about beans on boats, fill the gap, consumer packaged goods. Is that why we're getting food businesses? I don't know. And I can't attribute our efforts in that conversation to the intake we just had. It may have influenced. It doesn't mean it's impossible. And so I think the highest and best use of resources has to be measured. And how do we do that? So we could begin on a hunch, but then we have to look at how we measure. And so great to have people who want to do that and data nerds on board. I think that's a worthy conversation moving forward, is how do we do that? We also have to be careful that we're not using resources. Does it take a full FTE to gather that data? And do we get value for that too? So there's always that balancing act as well. But it is one thing that that I feel there's lots of room for improvement on. So right now, most of our reports to council and to you as a board are output based. And we would definitely like to move into outcome and impact. But that's a longer timeline and attribution is harder. So not impossible. So again, appreciate the comments because it's part of our conversation around the table too. What's it look like? How do we report better the value that our actions bring, even if it takes years in some cases. Land development in particular can take decades to have an actual physical business locate. So how do you measure that?
So how's the board going to end up prioritizing or picking priority on these items?
We aligned there. We aligned to the board strat priorities that you did last time. And then we work on, you have a highly skilled professional staff in conjunction with McSweeney who will bring to you suggestions of what we will who will bring to you an implementation plan and why. And so the staff is really attuned to continual improvement. Tina alluded to that today with our starter company program. Each year we look at how do we do it better with fewer resources to get greater impact. What's possible? We had 47 applicants. We took 12 in because those were the best suited for success through the coaching program at that time based on a number of criteria we didn't have 4 years ago that we've developed. This is what will indicate success. So the whole team is looking at that every day with everything they do. They have a challenge from me of one, not continuous improvement because they're overachievers and they may never sleep, but 1% improvement with everything we do. So across the board, it makes a much better programming and efficient use of resources. So we'll give you our best guess as to what is within our capacity, what will have the highest impact, where we can grow the economy most easily, where we can deal with the reality of, because it is out of scope for one department to change a municipal organization, but it is in our scope to work efficiently with our partners and to help them find efficiencies and us find efficiencies. So the leadership and collaboration and the diversify within, these are all partnering activities. And with partners, although frustrations we have found in our department, and both ways they can be frustrated with us, working together takes us further than being dictatorial. And I think a really good example for it would be one of the items is the film industry development. So we look at that not from what do we need or what do our partners need, what does the customer need? And if you're a film crew and you're coming here to make a film, you don't want the rules to change when you cross an invisible line. So we see that as something that would be best if we worked together with our partners, had a standard set of procedures on how to handle film inquiries and film companies coming to work here. So the same bylaws, same policies, same procedures, and same fees, that they're unified across the county. That would be the most efficient way for the customer. But we have Rick has experience. He's been working on building assets and attributes, and we have different levels of experience with our 9 municipal partners. We all come to the table and work on that and agree on it. We're going to have a very solid program to then build our shoulder season. So that's an example of how we can do that sort of work.
Lynn, you had a comment.
No, I'm good.
No, okay, Derek.
I'd just like to go on a bit of a tangent there to what Edger said. Like I run on metrics and everything I do in our businesses. I don't disagree that it's too broad based to focus a priority on metrics, but something as simple as tracking GDP within the county relative to other regional, provincial, federal, and comparative municipalities, not as a binding priority, but just as a background
benchmark.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I believe we're headed in the right direction. It'd be nice to have some metric to support that. That's
absolutely
both growth and retrogression can be measured.
Yeah.
And so I mean, it just can.
And we agree.
Yeah. So there's that big say, and maybe what you're saying is that there's that big lumpy number. Is it getting bigger or is it getting, is it getting smaller? That would be a good thing. And I think that's all what we're saying.
Yeah.
And how much
And
we
we're-
have to change it by? Like, I have no idea as to, like, is what we have now sustainable? How much do we need to move the needle to make it sustainable? Is it a 1% or is it like a 50%? Like, how big of initiatives do we need to actually make a big enough improvement to make this sustainable? I have no grasp of what those numbers are. So like, it's hard for me to make recommendations without understanding the degree of, kind of, yeah. Yeah, that's it.
Well, this is all really valuable in advance of our next conversation with Kevin and the McSweeney team. So
yeah, I think there will be a conversation that the board will need to have about what choices you would make to measure. For using GDP as an example, that can be a very helpful measure on what the local economy looks like. But there are so many various influences on that attributing that to actions taken in directly with this strategy would cause challenges. And I think you just want to be, I think if you pick a metric, you can pick any metric you want, whether it's GDP, whether it's business counts, whether it's job counts, anything like that. The reality is you want to make sure you're picking a metric that is influenced significantly enough just by this strategy that you can align the things undertaken in this strategy to that outcome. And we have done work in enough municipalities to make it very clear that you can't do that with an individual metric, typically speaking. Whether it's the Volkswagen plant as a really obvious example down in Elgin County there, or St. Thomas. When that gets up and running, that is going to fundamentally shift everything about the economic data in that community. And there are certainly really great things being done in St. Thomas and in Elgin County that made it open to that Volkswagen plant. But there were also fundamentally decisions made at other levels of government that decided where that was going. And you could do everything right and not win that plant, or you could do everything wrong and still win that plant. And if you tie it to a specific metric that has conflicting factors, you very much run the risk of correlation versus causation. The rise of ice cream leading to the downfall of pirates, things like that, where it's just these aren't related factors, but they still impact an outcome. And our concern is just if you tie it to a specific indicator, you are naturally going to always look at that indicator. And so if you tie it to GDP, and Vicki and Chris and the team do a phenomenal job, but for factors outside of their control, the Goderich port doesn't get developed or whatever else, factors outside their control, GDP falls, it's going to be really hard to change that narrative. And so it's not that it can't be done, it's that you need to be really, really careful if you're going to go down that road of making sure you're measuring the things you want to measure.
What do you tell your clients to measure? To say, if you do my plan, you'll grow your business by $308 million in 3 years. What do you offer an ROI? Like I would want to go to the warden here and say, there's an ROI on this plan of X, but you don't. And I know it's hard to do that, and I know it's kind of a dumb question, but is there anything like that?
Yeah,
that you
it's
offer?
a fair question. What we focus on is the qualitative reporting. And so what we want to hear is from businesses in the community, it is easier to work with the community, that it's a more welcoming environment 5 years from now, that there is not necessarily, we're not speaking amalgamation or anything like that, but that is an easier process to deal with the county or the partner municipalities, that businesses feel more heard than they did 5 years ago. It's not a quantitative measure, it's a qualitative measure. And that's, again, where that reporting back to council is really important. But if the staff can show council in a tangible way, we improved destination marketing by doing X, Y, and Z. We got more infrastructure around to support an increase in community engagement, or sorry, not community engagement, in visitation. while not necessarily like improving quality of life for residents through these things were done. We don't have a metric that measures that, but
Of course,
we did it in a way that we believe does that. We heard from community members throughout the strategic planning process that they wanted this. We achieved it. Therefore, we believe that that improved quality of life. It comes down to that qualitative reporting. That's the real key there. And I mean, I love numbers. I think numbers are great. But when I look at, not to, trash other consultants or anything like that, that's not what I'm doing. But when I look at plans from other consultants that rely on, you need to hit XYZ number. I mean, you can go under the hood and tear those numbers apart very, very easily. Of course. Because it's just, you've picked a metric, you've hoped to hit it, but it doesn't align with the actions in the strategy. And so we very much focus on the qualitative process in place and knocking those actions out of the park, because that's what we heard community members want to see improved.
Understood.
I guess the thing is, again, is just knowing that there's only limited resources. Like, how do we ensure that the time we are spending is going to have the best, the biggest output, the biggest income, and biggest output. And I'm not suggesting just one number to evaluate all of it. Each initiative should, to me, have some kind of measurable outcome to know that if we put in X amount of time or resources, we're seeing more, as a result. And like, to your example of like the film office, like, is there a big enough demand for filming that if we were to put X amount of resources to it, that we would see, that return on that or not. And to your point, we might not see it in 1 year. And maybe there's other ways we can evaluate it, but maybe there's like a pilot project we can do where it's just one person instead of like an office, like a liaison instead of not, like, just things that align with the potential output rather than just saying like we're hoping for improvement and not knowing what the return might be.
Yeah, and actually that's a really good way to frame it up, in that there are ways to evaluate whether it's worth it without directly focusing on, one specific number. Like if you do a bunch of the film stuff or the visitation things and see no change at all in interest, then you can evaluate that at that point and rely on staff to note that. Or if there's and I keep going back to BRE for whatever reason, but if there's a really key emphasis on reaching out to businesses and every business goes, I don't care, leave me alone, well, then you can pivot at that point. But what we're hearing right now is that the actions in this strategy are the highest and best use that we've heard through discussions with people in the community. And so focusing on those things is what will be really valuable, is the idea behind the strategy. And then it's constantly evaluating it, because what we often do is we'll come back with a community 4 years from now or 5 years from now and do a follow-up strategy. And the first thing we do is go through the current strategy and say, okay, what do you mark as a success that's no longer needed? What do you mark as an ongoing success? What do you mark as things that were relevant at one time, but especially the last 5 years with COVID, things shifted dramatically since sort of the last iteration of a lot of strategies. So what looked great in 2020 that you realized 2 years later, we actually struck this from our work plan because it just wasn't needed. You need to be able to pivot like that. We just typically don't tie those pivots to metrics as much as the qualitative reporting and staff knowledge.
Great. More questions, comments?
Yeah. If I could just follow up on John's comments that I really appreciate. Oops. And that's the fact on two levels. One would be housing. And when, for example, severance applications would come to the county for approval, the Huron County Council relies heavily on the municipality's input as to why they made the decision they did, because a municipality is closest to the situation of the people, and that knowledge is valued on a county decision as far as housing is concerned. Because and on another level, when it comes to economic development, I would suggest that when you're at the county council table, You wear the hat as to what's best for Huron County. And it may not benefit some municipalities and other specific municipalities. It may. However, it's for the good of the county. And so I would suggest that the decisions are in the best interests of the county as far as economic development. Does that make any sense?
It does. I'm just advocating a plan where I don't have to decide what hat I'm wearing. There is only one hat. There is one hat for growth. There's one hat for I wear the hat.
Totally.
And I don't have to decide on my hat. That's all I'm suggesting. And I can toss a bunch of those other hats in the closet and have one growth hat.
Totally.
That's all.
What's best for Huron County?
Yeah,
absolutely, in the residents.
And I'm not sure that at all I'm correct. I'm not sure at all I'm correct. I recognize that.
I'm going to suggest, that discussion, maybe we put a pin in it and decide whether that's something we can tackle at a future meeting or whether it's even in our mandate. Also recognizing we're in an election year, so.
Which is why it's prudent. Which is absolutely why it's prudent. It's less prudent in not an election. Come into the new game with a new team. Exactly prudent.
I guess if we're acting on the direction of county council, then that's something that the county's gotta, if they feel us to be in a position where we can do something about that. Is the challenge, right?
It's fair ball. If you think that they would come to that conclusion, then yeah, I understand. Then they may or may not, but I defend my right to say it. I mean,
sure.
That's why you're here, is because you have some conventional wisdom.
Correct.
So mine's maybe it's less conventional.
No idea why. Conventional wisdom.
What's that? Conventional
wisdom.
Oh.
That's why I'm conventional wisdom.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I was just going to jump in with I just wanted to make sure there were a few individuals who took the time to read through the report that Vicky was alluding to, who were involved in some way throughout the study. I just want to make sure that some of the concerns that they mentioned are highlighted. Some we've already discussed. In some of those comments, transportation and housing were certainly raised, and I think we've discussed here. The other piece was just a bit of commentary that the role of developing local food should continue to be highlighted and perhaps be highlighted a little more within the report. There was concerns from a tourism operator just about the municipal accommodations tax or the MAT tax implementation. As well, there was concern just around things for young families to do. And shifting gears a little bit, the Blue Water Center site was identified specifically as an opportunity that they felt should merit focus. And finally, there was some support along the lines of working together with partner municipalities on developing more shovel-ready land. I just want to make sure that those were out there for consideration by the board. Some of those things that hadn't come up so far. Thanks, Chair.
Any more questions, comments? Great. Well, Kevin and Chris, thank you very much for leading us through all that. That's a huge amount of work and still more work ahead of us. But I think it's good that we've gone through it and get it on paper and works for everybody. So under 9.3, we have a motion to accept that report.
Yeah, second line, 2 weeks. Yeah, no, it's great.
A mover and a seconder for that. Password McNeil and Tina.
Sure.
Any more discussion on the motion?
Great report. Stimulated a lot of conversation.
Carried. Thank you very much. So we're working on now 9.4 succession planning working group update. We're going to turn it over to Brittany. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Yeah, so we had a meeting on November 18th, which the minutes are enclosed for that from that meeting. And we are scheduled to have another meeting on January 27th, where we will continue that discussion regarding the gaps and where we can provide support. I just wanted to note that since that meeting took place, the province has announced it's called successionontario.ca, and it will be a series of resources and supports targeted specifically to sellers. It doesn't talk about the buyers at this point in time, and it is my understanding that we will be receiving, or advisors will be receiving training to coach to succession or to coach sellers, and that there'll be micro credentials. So we will give us a bit more. Will actually be really educated in how to talk to sellers about what a sale could look like for them. So I've seen like the very first stab at their website. I was told that we would find out early January more information. So I'm like chomping at the bit to get more information. But that's what I have for you today. If there are any other questions about what took place at the meeting or how we're moving forward, I'd be happy to answer them.
Well, the one comment I'll make. CIBC came and did quite an extensive presentation on the entrepreneurs and working with entrepreneurs, and it was well received. And I'll make note that Mr. Marshall did question them on keeping branches open in rural Ontario, because of course that is becoming much more of a hot topic the last 2 or 3 months. So it was brought up. Now, they did acknowledge it wasn't anything in their department that they had any influence on, but it's always hard to find the one that is making those decisions. So other comments from anybody that was there, or thoughts? Oh, I say him.
Yeah, thanks. I'm just looking at this why support for transition matters. 75% of the businesses will exit within 10 years.
And that was from 2022.
Yeah, and only 10% have a formal succession plan. What? How do business owners expect a business to be successful without a plan? We just discussed
something with no continuity.
Yeah,
they don't. They disclose.
There's a lot of reasons for lack of succession in small business. Businesses less than 25 people. Most of it is because of our generationally, we sent our kids to school and said, you're not going to be a landscaper, you're not going to be a metal basher, you're going to get a PhD and make noise. You're going to be a doctor or whatever. And so education was the thing. And so that a lot of what was the normal succession plan for agriculture or small business was the next generation. It's eroded. That's the number one reason. And the number two reason is financing. It's exceptionally difficult to get money now. There's one small blip that's happened recently, and it's directly as a result, I think, of some banging around and making noise that actually you and I were doing. Actually, the Bank of Montreal hasn't had a small business person for 3 years. We looked at the lack of interest in the Bank of Montreal from a lending perspective, small business perspective, as just lack of interest. They could give a crap kind of thing. As of now, her name is Julianne Jeffrey. They have a small business person at Bank of Montreal here in Goderich. So, that's kind of as a result of making noise, I think. They're saying this is important, but you don't have it, but now they have it. And those kinds of
it's getting on the radar for sure, right?
It's getting on the radar, yeah. And that's what it is. But but like you said about this program, what's it called? Successionontario.ca. People they don't realize it. They don't realize it till they break a leg. They don't realize it until they have a heart attack. They don't realize it until they all of a sudden look around and they say, gee, I'm 60. They don't realize it until they can't do the things that they normally did in their business. Then that's when they realize they need a succession plan. And typically it's way, way too late. The people I talked to yesterday, I said, you should have started this 5 years ago. Well, he didn't. He started it last week and he needs to sell the business. But he just had no, it's a lack of forward thinking. It's a function of day-to-day operation, not forward-thinking operation. It's don't look at an exit strategy. You know, the Tinas of the world and the Johns of the world, they look at exiting the day they walk in. But that's not that's not the way a lot of businesses, you know, we've been at it 42 years. That's not the way it's viewed. It's all operate until I fall over. Well, gee, guess what?
Brittany's team has added that to their coaching. So when we're working with startups, we're talking about how you're going to exit. What are you going to build?
Our business plan template, we're talking to them about what that contingency
The
is.
Succession Ontario website does, when the prompt is, do you want an advisor? It prompts you to locate the small business center in your area, which is good. Be good for you.
So if I could follow up on that, I'm going to direct this question to Derek. You have multiple businesses. Do you have a succession plan?
Good enough. Got 5 kids.
Yeah, exactly.
We got
You're gonna teach them to wipe their own ass.
One step at a time.
But honestly, if I recall, some of the businesses were purchased based on the fact that you have 5 kids.
Yeah,
That they're not all going to farm, that kind of thing. We had that discussion, so I'm assuming that was part of the succession plan.
more cash flow businesses instead of capital businesses.
Yeah, exactly.
So we have services we can talk to you about.
The wiping part.
That's another department.
That's out of scope. What's it?
I would like to comment though. I think we had a nice momentum series with Roz and the podcast series, and we had money left over from that SLIP program. I'd like to see continuation of that podcast series, focusing maybe on some of these succession issues, maybe a youth that returned to Huron County, maybe a roundtable of teenagers, maybe somebody who's bought a business, a Main Street business, not necessarily a giant viable enterprise, but somebody who's and maybe somebody who's sold a business. Not necessarily we can build on the momentum we had, but extrapolate that past the lens of agriculture. If we want to maintain our Main Street businesses, which I think we do, we have to put a little bit of focus on that. So
There'll be an episode coming out shortly. I just got it in my inbox yesterday.
We have 2 podcasts to be released. One of those is
it's actually split into 3.
Yeah, right. Some of them became 2 podcasts. We found we pivoted to a more efficient way and a more cost-effective way to do those podcasts. And so we're now working with Phil and Allie Main, who are graduates of our starter company program.
Cool.
They do podcasting. They take care of it from start to finish. They offer us a broader range of services for less money than we were spending on the previous podcast, considering the broader range of services. So we're supporting a small business. We're putting together what we most need to talk about next. And thank you for mentioning.
You send them the topic and the guests, I suppose, and then they look after the rest. Awesome. No,
Phil Main has a really large network from being part of this community for years. So there is an element of co-crafting, which was not dissimilar to when we worked with Roz. There was co-crafting because she had different networks than we do.
Yeah.
So that gets to continue, but we can basically say concept, development, some key guests, all yours. And they come back and there's an iterative process, but then it's all taken care of and it comes back to us with all of the things that are required through AODA as well for us to post podcasts. So it's great. It's what we're pleased with the first 2 iterations, which have not been released yet, but were developed this fall.
And we're just right now, I will say that we're still in the, like that, I got the initial draft yesterday. So that process for this specific podcast hasn't actually happened yet. So it's not coming out next week. Okay.
The other one was Mark with Mark
Yes.
working on, I Am Here.
I Am Here.
I Am Here. So it's looking at youth and newcomers and,
Yeah, maybe
how
a
they got
foreign worker, a temporary foreign worker, like.
Yeah.
2 are great. Where's the next?
What's the next one? Yeah.
But, yeah.
Yeah.
Good. More questions of? Seeing none, then 9.4, we have a motion in the agenda. Moved by the warden and seconded by Trevor. All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. So we have 9.5 and 9.6, which we are going to do together in one motion. That's the update for October and November. I'll turn over to Director Laws.
just if there are any questions, I'm happy to address those.
Any
And
questions?
now that we have, we don't have a gap in our admin support anymore, we will go back to the process where like we are doing the monthly report now that will go to council at the end of January. We'll send that to you, even though it will appear on your March agenda, but we don't want you to wait for that news. So we had a time when we sent that out prior to the agenda, then it appeared on the agenda. So because there's timely information on it, that we will go back to that process. Okay.
Roz? Yeah, Roz, go ahead.
Yeah, I just would like to state the obvious that I'm really going to miss Vicky's name on these reports. And we've been talking a lot about output versus impact, and Vicky, you are all about impact. And thank you for being just a source of inspiration, navigation, and really just that foundational knowledge and what you've done in the time you've been in this role. It has been impactful. So that's how I'll always remember this. And thank you again for everything that you do.
Any questions?
Council on the same day.
Seeing none, then we will ask for a mover or seconder for the motion as printed in the agenda. Derek and Lynn? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. So moving on to 10, financial statements. I was pleased to look at that budget. I think.
Brian, that just means we didn't spend.
Well, we were just a little under, not. But any questions on the financial statements? Circulated? Seeing none, then we'll call for a motion or a move and seconder for the motion in the agenda. Who would like to make those motions? Trevor, Neil, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Yeah. So we have nothing under 11.
No, we do not.
Any other comments before we go on to the next meeting and adjournment?
So I won't be seeking re-election I won't be seeking another term re-election. I was successful in my bid for the Dairy Farmers of Ontario Board. So
Yes. They're dead to us.
I
We're recording. Oh, yes.
She'll edit. Say it see you later than a goodbye, because I'd love the opportunity to rejoin again when the term is done. I think it's very dynamic and very impactful is the right word. So it's yeah. Thank you very much. There's 4-year terms there.
Just
Put that in the calendar.
We do accept non-board members on our working groups who just volunteer on topics such as succession planning. Should that be a consideration once you find out the scope of your DFO work? Just planting the seed.
Yes.
If I could make a comment, congratulations, Derek. You earned that successful election result with your vision.
Thanks, Glenn.
And you will provide leadership beyond Huron County to the entire province.
Thanks.
Look forward to that.
I was saying to Tina and Chris before, I'm still going to be working on economic development, just with a very narrow, much narrower focus, but yeah, maybe broader scope. So thank you.
Oh, that's awesome. Congratulations.
We'll miss you.
So, yeah, so having.
Promise to serve chocolate milk at the succession planning. Okay.
So is there anything you need to address on process?
Yeah, so you'll have a vacancy on this board now. And I believe Brian is done at the end of this year.
Yes.
Okay, so there's a couple options here. You can try and fill the single vacancy now. And then do the next one in a little bit too. Generally, all of the committees and boards of the county send out a joint call for positions, and that'll happen like maybe August or so. If you're interested in waiting and just doing it a collaborative approach to do that, it kind of saves a lot of time and energy and
money.
And money, always money. If that is the approach that the board seems to feel, if you can do without that vacancy, or with that vacancy for a little bit, that would also be okay. So generally we'll advertise like August or so, get all the submissions in by September. You do interviews, each of the committees do it a little bit differently, do interviews, etc. And then the appointment will be done, will be recommended to county council prior to the election. It will start with the new council. So you're going to have all new councillors generally, and you'll have a couple new board members. So the orientation will be all done together kind of thing. If that's the approach you're interested in. And I also would like to indicate that in the bylaw, it does indicate that until your position is refilled. So we could tap on Derek's shoulder. I just thought I'd throw that in. You're never ever going to leave us. So if you're interested in filling it now, I would recommend a motion to say, yeah, let's recruit now. If you're interested in maybe deferring it till in collaboration with the other, I would entertain a motion to do it jointly in collaboration with the other ones.
Well, I think it makes sense to do it in collaboration with the others. Everybody's okay. I'm sure the clerk can draft.
Yeah, I have a
motion saying such.
The active board recruit for vacancies in collaboration with the Huron County Boards and Committees in 2026.
Good.
So
Can I have a mover and a seconder? Warden and Tina. Sure. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Look at that. Where we go.
Good. So, and of course, this is our last meeting with
It is.
Director Lass.
It is.
And is shame to not have you here.
I will miss you all very much, and I have thoroughly enjoyed working with every single one of you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll send you the
Thank you.
time so you can join in.
The public gallery.
I might be in your gallery.
Anyway, thank you very much. So the next meeting is Thursday, March 5th. Did everybody get an email that has all the dates of the meetings for this year? I plugged them in my calendar, I think.
I think I did.
We'll take it. Something will come out from Mandy. Do you want actually appointments so it populates your calendars?
Ooh.
Good too.
That would be fancy, yeah.
Sure. Okay. We're aiming for fancy.
He's plugging up my calendar.
There's only 5 more meetings.
In my calendar.
Yes.
You only have 6 a year, right?
Yes.
So there's only 5 more. So.
Yeah. So, if there's nothing else, can I have a mover and a seconder to adjourn? Oh, Trevor and John. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. You get a kick out of another board I chair. They don't like voting in favor. So we have a vote. Is there anybody opposed to the motion?
Oh.
And nobody puts their hands up and then we move on.